Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our episodes covered by the team of the covers about the life of the vaccine injured members, people, and thanks a lot to those that watched our previous session when we had a chat with the Rado, Naomi, myself, and today we are going to talk about the anniversary edition, right? The anniversary edition of our vaccine injuries. So we have Rado on board.
Hello
Rado
again.
is a director of the covers, and we've got this spontaneous idea to talk about, like, again, the whole journey, what changed in these 12 months. And Rado, go ahead. As usually, you can start with your story.
Okay. Um, so honestly never expected to be 12 months. I think none of us did, right? It's because we've all probably had some sort of sore arm or snotty nose after a vaccine at some point, and we think, oh yeah, a few days, maybe a few weeks, but nothing like this. And um, as I got close to my 12-month anniversary, um, I started to look back at how far I'd come. You know, 'cause the first 3 months was terrible. I felt like I was, about to die. Um, and then I've had some improvements, had a lot of setbacks, um, found some things that worked, and we can talk about that in another episode. All the different things and all the experiments we've all done on ourselves. Um, but then, as I approached 12 months, um, and sort of reflecting on it, I thought, well, how do I feel about this now? Is it You know, and I was worried that particularly since my second month after the vaccine, I actually went to a very dark place, psychologically.
Mm,
And I believe it was exclusively the effect of the neurological effect of the vaccine, not my emotional situation. It was like reduced blood flow or brain damage or something like that. And as I was coming up to the 12 months, I was thinking, am I going to go back to that point? Is my emotions going to now take over? And am I going to go to a dark place? And so I was thinking, well, how am I going to deal with this? And the thing that I found very cathartic was I went through my records because I kept daily records for many months of all the symptoms, and I actually picked out all the unique symptoms that I had in a list, and so I wrote them all down, and I created a little video that I then released on my 12-month Vaxiversary, and just that process of recounting everything that I'd been through, and realizing that some of those things I wasn't experiencing anymore. Some of them had gotten worse, others had changed over time, but that was really therapeutic. And on the day of my 12 month, I didn't feel any different. I was not sad, I was not upset, I was not angry. Nothing was particularly different. Um, you know. So I was quite glad. It sort of was a testament, I think, to the fact that obviously I wasn't nuts. uh, and yeah, so and then post that releasing that video, and after the 12 months, I then looked back on that sort of milestone and thought, okay, now I'm in for the long haul. Okay, let's
mhm.
start looking. How am I going to deal with this long term? And so that's probably a good topic for another video.
For sure.
How about you?
Yeah.
Because you had your shots a couple months before me, and so your 12-month anniversary was earlier. So how was that process
Yeah.
for you, Nick?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was probably the same as for almost anyone who's got in the same situation. So again, it was kind of three stages of anger, denial, and then acceptance. So basically, as usually, the first, like even not anger, we can substitute the first part, I think, with surprise or shock. I think shock would be the best because again you feel like no one can believe you. You feel that you feel extremely bad. You feel the worst that so far in your life. Your health has been deteriorated. Everyone tells you that it's something psychological. It's not an issue with your health. But again, it was very beneficial meeting other people. So again, like for example, as we met, as everyone had met each other through various organizations, groups, again, when it wasn't still banned in Facebook or Reddit or something like that, people still had the chance to join and kind of, at least on psychological level, support themselves. Because I think the first thing that everyone needs to realize, had to realize at that time, was that I'm not crazy. So it's like I'm not crazy. Like even when everyone tells you that, you know what, like it's something else. You need to go for the second one. You need to go for the third one. Like it just cannot be from the shot itself. And when you see people, oh, actually it is from the shot. I think this kind of, I just say we can call it as being resurrected in a different dimension when you can't trust anyone. So speaking about the health, I would just say it was really bad the first couple of months, like really bad, like bad to the stage that you're asking yourself, how can you live after this point? How can you work? How can you just do things? Or you're just going to be a vegetable. And this is going to progress to the stage that you will get some terminal disease and die, for example, to basically now is kind of stable, but stable in a way when you would have a much better life when you didn't have all of these issues. Again, how about you, Rado? How do you feel your first couple of months comparing to now, as we are talking about the year?
Um, some ways better, some ways worse. Certainly better with the symptoms, right? Because my first worrying symptom was some pretty intense chest pain. Um, I was never scanned. I went to hospital 4 times over the course of a month, and it might have been 6 weeks actually. And they never did they did some X-rays, but they never did an echo. I didn't get an echo until month 3, and they saw something, but it wasn't pericarditis. It wasn't myocarditis. So, yeah, so that was the scariest time, and I didn't think I was going to die, but I sort of felt like, that my whole world was collapsing. It was I couldn't do anything. There was nothing I could do about it. The doctors couldn't find anything. Nobody could help, and um, and it was in my mind that maybe I could, but I wasn't entertaining that possibility. But yeah, so that's where I was the first few months, and then at about month 3, I started to notice some improvements. Some of those symptoms settled down, but then symptoms changed, and a lot of people I know in the community, they go. One person calls it the revolving cast of villains. These same symptoms just seem to go around in circles. You have them, then they go away, but something else comes, and then it comes back around again. So and so I developed mast cell problems, which is where the mast cells release too much histamine into the blood, and it feels like you're having a bit of an allergic reaction. And I had no idea that was going on. I've never had a serious allergic reaction, mild things from a bee sting and whatever, but nothing bad. And so, yeah, so that once it took me a few weeks before somebody pointed out to me, oh, that sounds like mast cells. And I completely had to change my lifestyle. No more alcohol, no more aged cheese. Not that I ever was a big consumer of those products anyway, but things like fresh tomatoes. It's a huge
Crazy.
lifestyle change. And we grow our own tomatoes here in our backyard, and spinach, another one. so that was. It took me a while to adjust to that, but then having sort of gone through that, now it's a case of I know I've got these symptoms. I know they're going to come back. Some days are going to be better. I have to make sure I don't overdo it. And then other days I'll feel absolutely terrible, and I just need to let my body just do nothing and just rest as much as possible. And so that's where I'm at. And it's kind of easier knowing that you're going to you're expecting something to happen,
Hmm.
um, and so the life is certainly less anxious. It is easier to deal with, but doesn't mean it's easy.
Of course,
It's
of course. And how did
um,
it affect your work, for example?
huge. So my business actually got smashed pretty bad by the lockdowns. We do a lot of consulting with regards to international issues. And so with the borders closed, a lot of institutions were just not interested in our services. So that really hurt our business. I tried to segue and develop some new products for the tertiary education sector. And then I got injured with the vaccine. And so I was no longer able to continue work on those products. A few months in, I had promised a foreign embassy to do a small contract for them, and I sort of estimated it was maybe a week worth of work, maybe 2 weeks. Well, it took me 3.5 months to do that work early this year, and even then, I'd sit in front of the computer and I'd be reading a document, and then I get to the bottom and have I read that? I can't remember any of it, and go back to the beginning, and I'd be staring at the screen for hours and hours, just trying to consume what I needed to, and that's why it sort of dragged it out, and it was very exhausting. And at the end of it, I mean, I'm sure that even though I only was working on a couple hours a day, it did clearly affect my health badly. So I'd said once we delivered that piece of work, I said I'm not going to pick up any more work until I'm sure I can sustain and deliver on the contracts. And that's been great. I've had the time to experiment with different therapies along the way, without having to worry about it upsetting work. So, which has been just as well, because some therapies have been very good, some have been, set me back a bit.
Lots
But
of people are saying about the brain fog and other stuff, and it looks like the brain fog is one of the most common. Like, and
yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's from the shot or from the virus itself, but it's literally everywhere. And
yeah,
some people are just permanently damaged. Like they permanently, it doesn't go away, it just stays.
yeah, it is horrendous. And that's when people ask me about the symptoms, I say that's been the most debilitating. Um, it, it's hard to explain to people. We've all had headaches, we've all been tired, but it's nothing like either of those symptoms, right? It's you imagine. And I did this on an interview recently. Imagine doing a simple sum. You take 1 + 1 = 2, and there's several components to that. You've got numbers. Your previous video blog, you were talking about a lot of the software and stuff, right? So you got the number one, which is stored in a register. You got the addition operator, and then you got another number one stored in a second register, and then you got the equals operator, which operates on what you've just put together. Well, what happens with brain fog is you put the number one in a register plus number two, but look what's happened. Number one's fallen off the register and you can't remember what's on there. So you've got to go back to the beginning of the problem. One plus, okay, start again. And that's what brain fog is like. It's like every single thought you have, it immediately disappears. So you can't maintain any consistent thought or pattern or anything like that. It's so difficult.
Yeah, it's just like a
And
life living with one register. You just overwrite exactly the same register
yep,
over and over again.
yep, that's right. And I describe at times, I say I feel like a goldfish.
Yeah.
you know, it's
And
and you'll
have you
often find
seen?
out, even when I'm
Sorry.
talking with you here, you'll sometimes hear me fumble words a bit, and that's the same symptom. It's
Mm.
my brain not quite the words not quite catching up to what the brain is thinking, or they're out of sync, and not
Hmm.
always being able to find the right words. Yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I also had the same. Like, thankfully, it's kind of improved, especially in the last 6 months. It was in the beginning also quite weird. But like, for example, rather you're following all of the news. Do you see any progress in any of the areas that look straight at the problem as it comes from the injections rather than the virus? Do you see at least any open-mindedness in this area, like from the time you were injured to now, like in this whole anniversary?
Yeah, it's a very interesting study in science, and it's typical. All throughout history, we have these examples when something happens, um, and there is evidence that is contrary to what everybody in science believes. They all dismiss it. That's not possible. That can't be true. You're lying. You must be fake. And it takes a while until a few brave scientists say, let's have a look. And then they find something. And then they show someone else and they prove it. And even then, they've got this huge inertia to overcome. And it can take quite a number of years. And I suspect that'll be our problem as well. But in this last 12 months, I have seen some changes. Now, like in that first video that we did, I said I have had a few friends who were very encouraging, scientists. They weren't in the right field to be able to help us, but they were open and minded enough, and obviously they respected me enough to say, "Look, I believe Rado. Obviously something's going on," but the scientists who should be studying this stuff at the beginning, it was just complete dismissal. No way. But now there's a few people around the world who are seeing that, yes, there is clearly something wrong with these people. They are finding biomarkers, certain things in the blood, like micro blood clots. Is appearing in a lot of people, not just vaccines, but long COVID, and some other diseases as well, like chronic fatigue syndrome. So those types of researchers who are now looking at the vaccine injured um, are getting their work recognised slowly, slowly, slowly. But it's funny to see some of these are really world-renowned experts, um, and when they put out this information, you have this still the masses, the majority of the community. They might say that's an interesting finding, but vaccines are still safe and effective. They will
Exactly.
not change their mind. There's a completely different issue about the history of vaccines and how much they've benefited society. So but people don't stop and think, but what about these vaccines? They talk about all vaccines, um, and assume that just because we call this product a vaccine,
Hmm.
it must have all the properties of all the other vaccines that have come before it. And that's certainly not the case. And there've even been vaccines in our lifetime that have been pulled off the market because of safety problems. So, um, yeah, and that's a huge thing to overcome for the vast majority of the scientific community. Um, but there's some good people out there. People like I've forgotten her name at Yale University. Um, uh, uh, Doing the Listen study. Her name
That's all
just
right. If
escapes me at
something,
the
we can
moment.
just link all of the names after. Yeah,
Yeah, we
that's
can put
okay.
it in there. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Akiko Iwasaki. That's her name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she started off looking at this long COVID, and as that study progressed, she eventually did include people with vaccine injured, and
Mm-hmm.
they're doing blood tests on vaccine injured people right now. And obviously, people in the injured community who are following the science, this is huge news because it's proof we're not crazy.
Of course, of
um,
course, of
but for
course.
that to catch up with the consensus, or to change the consensus, is going to take quite a while.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's just like this crazy shift when you know that something happened, you know that you're right, you know that you're not just making this up, but like it's just like the whole majority of people around somebody who has an allergy on the peanut butter. Again, I don't know how many people are allergic to peanut butter, but it's just the stake of minority versus the majority. And yeah, I completely agree with you. Some people are making amazing researches. There is also one of the first, like still the most famous that I know is I think it was a Croatian university, right? At University of Zagreb, when they were trying to go through, like in particularly, I think that was my problem with the muscle twitches and stuff. But the problem is that I have never heard since their last email. So yeah, since their last email, this is when they were really trying to get in touch with other people that already trying to contact them. But Any results? Nothing so far. So I don't know. I don't want to speculate that again. Maybe government tries to block them or something like that. I don't want to be that.
Well,
Uh,
it might not be government. Sometimes it's the institutions. You know, if these
you're right.
researchers, when they see a problem they want to tackle, there's no restriction. You know, outside the normal ethical boundaries, they can usually have a good degree of flexibility with starting to look at a problem. But once the university becomes aware, oh, these people are looking at vaccine injuries seriously, oh, this could jeopardize our
Mm,
reputation, you know,
exactly.
they're going to call into question vaccines, you know, and so they could get a tap on the shoulder from the vice chancellor of the university, who will say, no, no, we can't allow this research. Or maybe there's funding that comes in from, you know, certain
Oh, of
corporations.
course, of course,
And
of
this
course.
has been the problem with, I won't mention um, the particular area of medical research, but there was major studies coming out looking at some therapeutic products,
Hmm.
um, and said, no, these products don't work. But it turns out that a lot of the researchers on this study, very, very well respected researchers, they all had major conflicts of interest with competing funding from outside companies. So um, and that unfortunately taints that whole research paper. Now, it may have been correct, but um, we have, you know, these governance standards and these transparency standards for a reason, because we want to know, is this person being influenced by an outside force? And so, unfortunately, I think there's been a lot of that go on. Um,
Yeah.
and if
Yeah,
not
it's all
directly,
about
then
business.
yeah. And I think if it's not, like, it's hard to say it's direct influence, but I am confident in saying that a lot of institutions are worried that if they do this research, then that will basically um, uh, diminish their chances of getting major corporate deals in the future.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, this is insane. If you look there, it's still for someone to make the money, either it's corporation, someone else. It's crazy. It's really hard to believe that the whole thing can be a result of someone's trying to earn money on this, which is unfortunately the case. Like the whole idea with the whole thing with the virus, it made so many companies incredibly rich.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Otherwise, they would have never done this.
yeah, and that's, it's kind of the good the good part of the free market pharmaceutical industry, is that people will be willing to invest billions of dollars into the R&D required, and obviously they expect a payoff. But then we have our government agencies that are supposed to be the gatekeepers to protect you and I from the greedy side of, you know, pharma capitalism. And unfortunately, in many countries, those gatekeepers are funded by those same companies, right? You know, here in Australia, the TGA get something like 95% of its budget is from the pharmaceutical industry. It's
Exactly.
similar in Canada, New Zealand, many countries around the world. The US is a bit different because they have the Food and Drug Administration. So,
Mhm.
but even so, it's the majority of their funding comes from pharma. Um, but I think if you look
Insane.
at, say, there's a number of, I won't mention any by name because I haven't actually looked, but I'm pretty confident that you look at the countries where they have not recommended vaccines for kids, or they have stopped vaccinating young adults. They're likely to be countries where their drug agencies um, have less money directly coming from pharma.
Mhm.
So I think that's sort of tells a bit of a story, doesn't it? That's um, our our so-called independent drug agencies. Um, the optics is not good, at least, right?
Exactly.
And
We
at
don't have any
worst,
independent
yeah,
agency at all.
exactly, yeah.
Doesn't even exist.
And
So
and when
yeah,
and when you suffer these things, um, that's what worries you, right?
exactly.
Now, we may be completely wrong on this. Maybe our agencies are absolutely independent, and every single member in those agencies is working 100% for the benefit of the consumers.
Mhm.
Let's assume
Mhm.
that that is entirely true. But as someone who gets injured, submits a report, nobody makes any further investigations. Nobody says sorry. There's no compensation, and there's certainly no further warning to the public about it. Then you start to think, whose side are they on? And that's where I know some people in the injured community have really gone down the rabbit hole talking about conspiracies and all this type of stuff, and that's unfortunate. And that's the fault of the drug agencies. Have done a very poor job of engaging with the people who have been harmed by these products,
Exactly.
and
We
and
can
so
have
they,
the whole TGA and etc. or FDA video series just about that. About your
yeah,
experience and other people. I think we can compile the whole selection, the whole
absolutely.
playlist.
Well, have you watched the new movie Anecdotals?
Oh, I haven't watched it yet, but I heard about this.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
fantastic. It's very different to other documentaries that have been out recently. It's very centrist, and the filmmaker is more a sort of a left-leaning
Mm,
person, Democrat voter in the US, and couldn't believe, just like us, couldn't believe what happened to her, and the fact that she was gaslit so badly and then censored. And so that's where the whole documentary comes from. It just tells people's stories, but it relays the experiences that a number of people had with the American agencies. And it's the same as what we've had here. Just how could you guys not see this? How could you not
exactly.
do anything, right?
Yeah, it's a global problem. It's a global problem. Yeah, I think we should have some really hard conclusions for the next wave of another virus.
Yes.
Hopefully it doesn't happen, but of course at some point we'll see
Yeah,
something.
exactly. I mean, that's one of the things that motivates me is to try and make sure that it won't happen quickly, but we need to make sure that we infect our government systems with a new paradigm, or rather a clean paradigm, that that these issues need to be tackled honestly and
Mm,
transparently, and so that when something in the future does happen, and it will, something else will happen,
of
um,
course.
that we don't get the types of, um, firstly, the very dictatorial actions like we've seen, but when it comes to the therapies, we don't get abandoned like we've been abandoned. We don't, and it's taken more cautiously. There's a reason we have processes set up, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, and then long-term safety studies. There's a reason drugs normally take a decade or more to come to market. And
Exactly. But
and
hey, they
here,
put the emergency label, and this is the whole excuse, right? Because under the emergency label, who cares? If you don't die, it's a success.
yep, that's right.
But if
So
you're crippled for like a year, and that's the problem.
yeah,
So yeah, that's for
yeah.
sure. And rather, what do you see? I don't know. What's your dream in the next 12 months? Let's see. Like, let's just say if you come to the stage of, let's just say, I hope that there would be some improvement, but let's just say for the next time of the biversary, right? The biversary. But hopefully, it's just gonna be, just some echo remains, just some bad experience. So what would you see? What do you dream about to happen in the next 12 months?
I'd like to see, a for myself and for others, a clear pathway to healing. Um, and we've all there's this huge mix of drugs and nutraceuticals and therapies that we've all tried. Some have worked for some people and some haven't, and it's all different. But it'd be nice to see like a pathway that it's
Mhm.
structured, because I think a lot of us, and me included, have tried so many different things and probably haven't tried some things long enough. Probably tried some things that we shouldn't have tried. But so we need a good flow chart to really help us. Um, and so through that type of structure and our own experimentation, we can get to the point where we can see a steady improvement in ourselves. So in
Yeah.
12 months' time, like, I don't expect to be back to full health in 12 months' time, to be honest. Not after 12 months already. So, but I do hope that I will be able to work as much as I was before, and um, be able to successfully manage my symptoms so that I don't have to forego, trips with the family or a meal out or anything like that. So, how
Completely
about you?
agree. Completely agree. I'm exactly on the same page. So, for example, everyone is a bit, not a bit, but mostly egoistic about this thing. Like everyone just wants to feel better. Like everyone wants to kind of wind the whole time back and just, oh gosh, I wish I didn't do it. If I knew what would have happened, I would just, I don't know, I would rather chose to, I don't know, get under the bus or something, but skip that time. But hey, it's done, it's done. I'm sharing exactly the same points with you, Rado. I think you summarized it amazingly. Definitely, the awareness, I think awareness is just the key word, like for the future. Awareness, learn on mistakes, kind of get this whole thing in agile way to understand that in future it should not happen again. So for example, we all know that we are not gonna live forever, right? There would be another generation and another generation. And seeing that we already tapped in the field of emergency medication being executed on people, we know that it's most likely just a beginning at some point. So if something else happens, we will see the same picture. And this is what we don't want to see, right? So this is why probably again much better consent, much better awareness about the potential side effects. But even if the government and other agencies they don't know fully what can happen, just as you said, be transparent, right? Like once they discover that there isn't the issue with the heart or heart inflammation, or there is something, as you said, the autoimmune reaction, like just make it transparent because even now, once you want to go and get your booster or something like that, there is nothing about that. Like majority, for sure, something about the heart, something about the blood clots, but what many people experience, including you, Rado, this neurological and autoimmune diseases, it's not there. It is absolutely not there. And of course, it would be great to run some kind of pre-flight test, some kind of compatibility check. I don't know if it's like, again, I'm not a scientist, you're a scientist. Maybe you will say I'm dreaming or it can be done, but something that, all right, you take the blood test and then you compare that maybe, I don't know, if you have some particular existing virus, something like EBV or something else that may interfere with the mRNA or something like that. Again, I'm just speculating. I no way I'm a scientist, no way I'm in medical area. I'm just saying that would be great to have this insurance that like testing environment, sandbox, where you can fail, succeed, but then in production, once it's getting injected, it doesn't fail.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a whole another episode, Nick.
Exactly, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I know some research that's just starting up looking at the genomics and
Oh,
trying to
for the
work
next
out
episode, for
for the
sure,
next
for the next
episode.
one.
So yeah. Anyway, that's absolutely right. There are things that we can test for now. We know of some risk factors,
Mhm.
but it's just too difficult. From a government policy point of view, it's just too difficult. We just jab
Yeah,
everyone, and
I know,
that's not
too
that.
expensive.
Yeah. Oh, we're going in an area that's just we could talk all day. how,
Exactly,
how
exactly.
about we wind up here? I think the idea was we are going to have a bit of a chat, reflecting on this to the
Of
12 month,
course,
and then maybe when you upload this, Nick, tag my little Vaxiversary video at the end so people can see what I did.
of of
It's only
course.
2 minutes, and then after that, people watch that. Maybe jump on the COVERSE social media. We're running a good fun little Christmas campaign at the moment called the 12 Days Post-Vaccine, just as a way to highlight some of the weird and interesting side effects we've all experienced and
Oh God,
raise some
where did we
awareness.
come to? Where did we come to? Yes, we are creating a advent calendar for the injuries
Yep.
from the vaccine. Oh, life is so unpredictable. You never know where you're gonna be.
Yep.
Awesome.
All
Thank you
right.
very much, Rado. It was amazing conversation. And again, if you're watching, subscribe. I mean, if you can discover the channel and see this content, it's already amazing. And again, we are going to post. We will try at least once a week. But then, if there is some super interesting material, breaking news, we'll just post straight away. And we'll chat with Rado. You're gonna see Rado quite often. We'll chat with Naomi and other members. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. And yeah, see you, Rado.
See you, Nick.
See you. Bye bye.